All right, welcome everybody. We'll go ahead and get started. Today we're going to discover some of the benefits of BIM360 Docs. My name is Stephan Gumpert. I'm a technical specialist for the Autodesk ANZ team, and I cover all things structures, fabrication and cloud. So Autodesk has a vision to help people imagine, design, create and build a better world. And one of these processes is done by using the process called BIM. Okay, so rather than modeling the old 2D method or using native modeling techniques for 3D, whatever, using BIM allows us to model buildings with information and being able to use that information to save time in downstream processes and even during the design process itself. However, there's still a lot of people who are working in the old ways. Okay, so they're coming along, they're using their CAD package, they're creating their 2D design drawings or a bunch of files. Those files are then being sent via email, but there's no information actually attached to these files themselves. They're purely just sending snapshots in time, PDFs and whatnot. So what we want to do is we want to increase project efficiencies by utilising this BIM model to a greater extent. And to do this, we introduce the use of the cloud. When we are using the cloud, we then refer to the term as connected BIM. Or this is one avenue where we utilising the connected BIM scenario. There's many different variations of it. So what we're going to have a look at is we're going to have a look at the platform called BIM360 Docs. So if we bring up the interface and have a quick look at the portal itself, you can see this is a web page or a screenshot of the actual web page itself. And inside this area there is two defining areas within the interface. So there's the area above the line and below the line, and essentially both areas have very similar functionality, but they subtly work different depending on the file types you upload to each area. Important to note here is that this is a common data platform built on top of the Autodesk Forge APIs. It's cloud-centric sharing of your data or your BIM data, or what I like to use, it's cloud storage on steroids for BIM. Okay, the whole environment is controlled through permissions. So obviously there's going to be an account admin area. Inside the account admin area, we can define companies that are part of our environment, and the account admin, actually this allows you to add companies or create companies which can be used across all your different projects, not just one particular project. But you can see we can fill in the company details, address, state, whatever. These companies are then attached to people that are created as members inside our account admin area, which are used on your projects. These members themselves are added via a email address or an email alias, and the users are given a role inside the account area. Now it's important to note that you can add them one at a time, but they can also be imported via spreadsheets, giving you the ability to import stuff or bring in your users in a much easier fashion. So as I said, the reason we add the people in is because we add permissions to the folders that you saw in the interface, and these permissions are applied either by user, by company or by role, or all three of them. Okay, permissions are inherited from the top down for your, from your folder permissions. So i.e. starting off with very little permissions at the top end, and then working down to a greater increased permission level as the list goes down. So for example, you may provide view-only permissions to a particular company, but then there's particular people in that company or roles within that company who you want to give more permissions to, which you can then override by doing so. As I mentioned, there's two areas. There's the docs, the plans area, which is above the line, which could be broken down into different disciplines, either by the construction sequence or even by structural, mechanical, architectural, being different types. Or below the line, you have the ability to, for the project files area, and in this area you apply all your project data, or you could even use that bottom area for also receiving data from outside sources. Again, because this whole environment is based on the web, you're not reliant on your own IT infrastructure to bring those outside people in. It's purely just an email alias that somebody can log in with to see this information. So let's have a look at the folders and the permissions themselves. So if we have a look at a particular folder and we have a look, we press the three dots on the end of the folder name and we press the permissions button, it brings up an interface where you can apply a permission. So you can see we can enter the role, the company, or the individual name / email address, and then we can give one of 5 different permissions. So if we expand this area out, you can see we've got everything from view only or upload only to view and upload, view, upload, edit, and full control over everything in those folders themselves. But Docs itself isn't just controlling the documents or permissions on the documents themselves. Docs can be used for issues or checking. So for example, we can create issues during the checking process, either on our models, or we can create issues at a document level, and we can also create issues at a project level. So we can, for example, from a project level perspective, we may be missing a particular specification. We can create an issue, assign that issue to somebody to resolve that issue, even set a due by date, and there's anyone who's in on the project can be assigned to this issue. The interesting part is with all these issues is that everything's stored centrally in one location, and having this information or data stored in one location leads to more accountability. Okay, this is important, obviously, especially from a checking process. In the old days, there was a lot of checking done using paper methods, or even markup of PDFs, and then the PDFs get lost. Having all this stuff stored in the cloud means that it's accessible anywhere, anytime, in one central location. Docs also has an RFI process or an RFI workflow in place. So if you go into your management area, you can see there's a workflow that you can define, and the workflow allows you to specify who of the users, roles or companies can create, manage and review an RFI. So you can create an RFI process with an outside consultant. So if, for example, anyone in your office may want to create an RFI. There's a particular person on a project who manages whether an RFI is valid or not inside your office. Then the reviewer could be the outside source who then answers the RFI and sends it back into the system for the particular person to then go and resolve whatever the answer was from their RFI. Again, with the RFIs, similar to the issues, the RFIs can be created at model, document or project levels, and RFIs track history, comments and attachments to them as well, similar to issues, again all in one central location, giving you that accountability for everything that you do. As my title suggests, history never lies. So we've talked a lot about the accountability side of things. If we come in and have a look at our project admin area, you can see that we have under the services, you can see everything that's happened inside our project. This is just obviously a snippet of a small area that I created a while back. You can see everything from viewing issues to creating issues, publishing markups, viewing files, uploading files. All this stuff is accountable or traced inside the activity log, and the activity log can be exported out to a CSV file for further analysis if you so require. So from an overall perspective, BIM360 Docs is, as I mentioned, it's built on the Forge API. It's built by Autodesk from the ground up. It's a common data repository where you can track and use your 2D and 3D data along with other different file types all in one location, and access this data from many different platforms, including mobile devices, PCs, etc. So if we look at the history a little bit in the past, Autodesk invested heavily back between those dates there in the desktop and cloud era, or the desktop and cloud environment. We then started to introduce a few more mobile apps and cloud apps, and now Autodesk is focusing on integrating all that data from the desktop applications and the cloud applications into one integrated environment. So, I mean, we've talked about having data at the center, and if you think about companies like Facebook, Google, Twitter, all their data is centrally located in one location, gives them full visibility on everything they need in the way that they use their data. And from a project perspective, having your data at the center means that you've got full visibility on what's happening on your project as well. The environment is fully configurable. You can deploy this however you choose. I mean, it has open APIs. Yeah, we've got multiple entry points into the actual application, as I mentioned before, the different methods, either being via mobile app, tablet or phone, Android or iOS, and of course, you know, supporting your 2D and 3D data from your BIM perspective. So probably the next steps for you guys after we do a demo is to pick a project and give a trial a go. You can sign up for a free trial online, and obviously work together with your channel partners on your Autodesk team that you're connected with, because being able to connect with them, you may answer a lot more questions than just trying to do things yourself. So let's have a look at a physical demo. All right, let me just switch screens here. Okay, so here you can see my screen. The screen itself is showing the docs environment. You can see I've got my plans area up the top, or what I referred to as my models and my sheets, and the bottom area is my project files. Okay, so as we mentioned, if you click on a particular folder and I click here and I go to permissions, we can come and set the permissions, as I said, either by role or by company or by the individual emails themselves. Now, both areas are subtly different. They're the same, but they're different in their functionality. So if you're a Revit user, for example, you can upload files to both areas, or if you're an AutoCAD user or a Plant 3D, Advanced Steel, whatever, the platforms themselves, the top and the bottom, support almost the same in the way of file formats. And you can see here on this web page that I brought up here, there's 40-odd different file formats, everything from Autodesk file formats to non-Autodesk file formats as well. So the interesting part here is that Docs isn't just built for Autodesk CAD data. You can also use non-CAD data in these environments. So one thing that I like to show is that, for example, I can upload Revit files to both environments. And for those of you who know Revit, Revit actually stores everything in one file itself. So from a usability perspective, all the drawings, the sections, the views, the 3D views are all stored in the one file. You can see here in my display panel, on the second column is actually the file name from which my Revit files come from, and then the views that have come from each file itself. So for example, if I open up my 3D view of my structural model, it opens up the file, and you can see up comes the actual model itself. And this is the native Revit model that's been uploaded in this particular environment. So we can come in, we can zoom around, we can orbit, we can pan. You can see we have a whole range of navigation options down the bottom here. We can click on the individual items themselves. We can choose to go and look at the properties of this element. So for example, we can scroll down here, we can see that this column here is a 310 UV40. This metadata is naturally or natively extracted during the upload process of your file. So for example, if you upload an advanced steel file, Revit file, CAD MEP, most of the CAD formats, the native data is already there. So the transformation of what you normally need to do to get your CAD data into other viewing platforms, there's no actual conversion process. Here the data is just brought in together. One of the interesting things is this particular file, you can actually see the version history of the file itself. So you can see on October 14 there was a version uploaded, then on Jan 15 there was another one. The interest, and version 2 is the current file. The interesting thing here is that I can compare version 1 and version 2 to each other, because all the versions are always kept online from a history perspective. And when it does the comparison of the model, it brings up the data up on screen and it gives me this ghosted display showing me everything that's changed between version 1 and version 2 of this Revit file. So you can see, for example, in this particular model, these two columns here were added, because you can see the green is specifying the green on the added in the model. And in this particular case, this pile footing underneath the building was removed out. Okay. The interesting part about the modifications here is you can click on any of these modifications and it highlights the changes in the model. We can filter the change. We can say, for example, only see the architecture changes, or show me only the structural changes. We can download the list of the changes into a CSV file, so we can actually see the changes in a spreadsheet where we may want to go and analyze our Revit file. You can even change the way you see this particular view, and instead of having it in an overlay mode, we can have it in a side-by-side mode. So you can see version 1 is on the left, version 2 is on the right, and you can see between one version and the next, you can see the difference between the two models. Okay. Obviously, as I said, we can go and click on any of these elements and see the particular items themselves. If you had modified elements, the comparison does work on geometrical properties. It also, so i.e. checks on geometry, it checks on metadata, and obviously if it still exists in one version to the next, whether it's added or deleted. So if we exit the comparison mode, and then we close our history down, and then close our file, you'll also notice that from the same structural file, or from the architecture file, whatever it may be, you can see we can look at the different drawings or sheets that are visible inside that Revit file as well. So for example, if I click on this view here and we open up the view itself, this is the sheet view from within the model. Now the interesting part here is this model is intelligent, okay, or this 2D sheet view is intelligent. So just like in Revit, you can see I can click on this wall panel or on this door, and I can actually see the properties of this door. So you can see this is a 1500 by 2700 door. Okay, we can come in and we can actually use measuring tools where we can actually sort of snap to the individual items. Gives us a dimension. We can come in and put extra dimensions in whatever it is that we want to do. We can take angle dimensions, we can take area dimensions, whatever it is that we like, we can take dimensions. The other interesting part is if I close this, I can actually look at my sheet in a split view or a side-by-side view of my model. Now, the reason this is quite interesting is that I can pick on this same door, and when I pick on the door, it highlights in the model and ghosts everything else that you see in the model. Meaning that if you look at your 2D sheet and you're not really sure what you're looking at, or what the item is in the model, you can click on the item in your sheet and you can see it directly in the model, which is pretty cool from where I sit. The other interesting part is that the drawings themselves are linked to the different views. So because all the views inside a Revit are integrated with one another, you can actually go and look at all these views, or the sections for example, and go straight to them. So you can see here my south view, it's come from this location, I can pick it and it goes straight to the south view from that model. Or if I return back, okay, we return back, I can exit the view, and if I open up another sheet view where there's a section, you can go straight to that section location. Now we talked about, one area we haven't talked about yet is the ability to mark things up. So you can see here, for example, in this particular drawing, I've got a bit of a markup on this drawing, okay? So I've got this revisions cloud, some dimensions that I've created. That is also accessible on the markups panel on the left-hand side here. So you can see I've got a published markup to which I can add attachments to. You can edit the markup, you can archive the markup, but a markup is quite simple in the sense that maybe I want to, remove this area here. I can come down here into the markup button or toolbar down the bottom here, pick, and you can see I get a whole range of tools from markup perspective. So for example, I might not like these particular areas here. I might say, get rid of this area, put some text in here, put in here, remove, and then you can see we've got a bit of a markup. All right, I've created a bit of a too big a markup there. Let's delete that item there, delete. We put in a different bit of text, change the size, whatever. You can see we can highlight things, so we can sit and come down and highlight the area in different colors. We've got options to come into the tools area here. If I come into here, you can see if I want to place dimensions, I can place dimensions. I can put polyclouds, segmented polylines, clouds, circles, squares, lots of different options. And when I'm done, this particular markup itself is now visible inside my panel, but at the moment the markup itself is private, so I haven't actually exposed it to all the other people on my project. But any point in time, I can choose to edit or delete the markup, or come in here and publish the markup, which I could have done at during the markup phase as well. Once my markup has been published, it's now going to be visible to anybody on the project. And this markup feature is available on, again, the documents and the models inside the particular folder structure itself. Now, as I mentioned here before, when I upload my Revit model to the upper area here, it tends to extract all the sheets and the 3D views straight from the model. If I upload the Revit model down to my project files area here, it has the same functionality, except for here it's just the Revit model, and when you open up the actual view itself, so if we go back to our Revit model here, so if we were to come down into my 3D view again, we actually get an extra option down here on the side in the project files area, allowing us to navigate between the different sheets and different views. So all the data is still actually there. One point of interest that I might point out while we're here, the metadata that is attached to all these objects is accessible through the Forge APIs. So if you are looking at integrating possibly this system with existing systems in your office, this is also possible from a development perspective. Okay, so we've talked about project files and plans area. Probably the only other feature that I would talk about in the models and sheets area is the fact that you can upload a PDF to the particular area up here, and those PDFs, you can either be a single sheet PDF or a multi-page PDF, and those PDFs are visible here as well. Let me just see if I've got some PDFs here. So if we scroll down into my folder, you can see I've got a series of PDFs, and you can see here in this particular case I've got two versions on this PDF as well. If I pick here, it opens up the actual PDF itself, and you can see we have the PDF, and again we've got the ability to compare one version to the next, similar to what we had in our model as well. Again, you'll notice we've got the ability to create markups, issues, and RFIs on the PDF as well. So back in my actual Revit model that I was showing you before, I actually do have a couple of issues. Now, before we actually look at the issues themselves, you'll notice that in the interface here we have markups, issues, and RFI column for each document or each entry inside either the plans or the project files area. So you can see, for example, this particular structure here has, this structural model here has two markups and two issues created. Now, this is the visibility of what is in each entry inside of each file, but you can actually see all the issues before we actually go and create one. You can see all the issues aggregated in one big list, who they were created by, who they're assigned to, which company they belong to, what the due date is, if it's fallen over the due date and it hasn't been resolved, whether the thing is answered or open. And of course we can filter this list based on status, who created it, assigned, the date, and of course just like with our other areas, or the activity log for example, we can choose to export this out as a PDF or as to a CSV file, allowing us to be able to export this data out if we so need to record it or store it somewhere else other than in the cloud. So the first issue that I would create is at the project level. So you can see here on the right hand side in the issues folder, in the issues folder, I can actually create an issue here, give it a title, a description. So for example, I'm not going to create another one, but you can see here I've got another open one here, and this is actually a project specific issue. You can tell because it's not associated with a document, whereas the other ones are associated either with a 3D file or a 2D sheet, or in this particular one, it's actually associated with a view from a DWG. Okay, so you can see here when I open it up, you can see the actual issue itself, the description of the issue, who it was created by, on what date, who I assigned it to, what the due date was. Obviously the due date can be changed on a regular occasion. At the moment you can see it's not specific to any document itself, but if we come over to the activity log, you can actually see what it was opened. I can add a comment here, I'll chase it up as soon as possible, send, and then the comment, obviously it's my own comment against my own issue, but you can see from a usability perspective, if somebody else was to comment on here, especially seems as, you know, if Tom had have replied to the initial request like I'd asked, there would be comments in here from Tom to track what's happening. Once the issue itself has been answered, we can change the status to answered and has been chased up. You know, obviously the attachment missing paint spec is attached, right? So because we could actually attach the attachments through the activity log, we can then close that out as done, and it's now answered. So you can see down here was the ability to actually attach attachment. When you attach the attachment to the actual issue, the attachment can either come from three locations. So you can see the attachment can come from the plans area or the models and sheets area from within my document interface, or from the project files. So for example, the customer may have actually uploaded the paint spec into the specs folder, which maybe he has access to, or you can actually upload it from your PC as well. So if maybe you've got an image that you want to attach, you can see you can attach images as well. If I cancel this, and you can leave this environment. Okay, we're going back to here and you can see obviously it's answered. From a document perspective or a model perspective, we can create the same sort of issues. So again, if I come down into my Revit environment, and I'm just using this because this is quite an interesting model itself. You're not limited to just using Revit. I mean, IFC is supported here, DWG, most of the native Autodesk CAD formats are supported, which you can then get intelligently into this area as well. But you can see this particular model here has two actual issues in the actual model. So this is an issue where I've created an issue at a model level. So if I come into the issues area, as I click into each one, it zooms in, and you can see in this particular case, I've said the bracing connection is not correct. Obviously, me coming from a structural background, I created issues from a structures background, so apologies if you're not a structural person. But again, you can see you have the same sort of interface for editing, assigning it to a particular person, modifying the activity, and either uploading images or adding more comments to the actual issue itself, and then the issue can actually be closed out again, same as before, either open, answered, or closed. You can also, every particular issue itself in each model, you can actually export the data per model, same as we can export the issues from the issues panel itself, again giving you the ability to export the data if required. We can sort them from a whole different bunch of perspectives, whether it be from created, from old to new, new to old, status, closed or draft, and we can also filter these issues based on maybe the user, what they're assigned to, their status. So for example, I want to see all the closed issues or the answered issues for argument's sake. We can then uncheck those boxes, and the filtered list for this particular issues panel for this model then gets adjusted accordingly. Okay. Similar to issues, we also have the ability to create an RFI. Again, you come through the process here, you specify a point where you want to create an RFI, give it a title, description, suggested answer. We can attach attachments to this particular RFI. So if I browse, again, I've got the ability to browse back to files within my BIM360 docs environment, either the area above the line or below the line, so your plans area or your project files area as well. Or again, we can upload from our PC as well. Again, we've got the ability to assign the particular people here. So we just give this a title, and we come into here. We should be able to put in a question, potential answer, and then choose a location, the ability to sign, and so on. We can even add, we can assign it to people, the RFI, and place co-reviewers or just distribution lists to distribute these RFIs further. And again, this is just a bunch of options which you can customize and use to suit how you require the process to perform. Okay, let's go back out of here. Close. All right, so we've talked a lot about comparing of models, comparing of sheets, side-by-side views for 2D and 3D, the viewing of different file formats, comparing of PDFs, marking up of PDFs. One other area of PDFs that is interesting or is quite good in this particular sense is for a particular PDF, you can create what's called a title block. Now, with the title blocks area, you can define the two different particular title blocks themselves and define where the titles are coming from. And then when the PDFs are extracted, the object character recognition is used to extract the drawing number and the title from these particular drawings. So if I upload a 100-page PDF into this environment, it will extract each sheet out. I can assign the title block, and the title block may be an A3 PDF or maybe an A4 or an A2, whatever the title block size may be, or you can define it on the fly. And then that metadata through object character recognition is extracted out through those particular PDFs as well. The other thing that we can do is at any particular folder level, we can come and add our own attribute information to each line item in here. So for example, we may want to capture some sort of information, whatever it may be. The information can be a text field, it can be a date picker, it can be from a drop-down list. So, the text question could be, add a comment. Maybe you want a date picker in there of when you last reviewed the document. Maybe you want to put a drop-down list to pick from a multi-select list, pick one of the items that you may choose that you want to assign this metadata to these particular PDFs, or the Revit file, or the Revit sheets, or whatever it is that's been stored in here. The other interesting part is that these attributes cascade down from that level down. So if I had a particular attribute defined at this level here, those attributes will be available all the way down. But then at the PDF level, I could then add extra attributes which are not going to be available at the top level up, giving you that feature to control what you want to do per folder structure, if you like. Now, at the moment, you've seen everything that I'm doing is done on the web, okay? But the same interface can be seen in your iOS tablet, or say your iPad, or your Samsung tablet, for example. So BIM360 Docs is working with iOS and Android, giving you that flexibility or capability to access the data from almost any type of device that you need. This whole scenario is based at a project specific level. So you can see here, this is my current project that I'm working on, and every user that I invite into this project has access to only this project. So again, through your project admin area, here you can see we can go into there and we can add more users into that particular project. You'll see down the bottom in my project files area, I've got folders for site photos because we can upload images into BIM360 Docs. Maybe you've got an in and out folder, and in the in and out folder, I've created some subfolders here for maybe my MEP fabricators or for my steel fabricator to maybe share documents for review. So maybe you need to review the structural steel detailing model prior to actually approving the drawings for fabrication and so on. So you can use this as a mechanism to transfer files to you or to send information to somebody else. And of course, because this is web-based, there's no actual software install required, which means anyone you invite to your project, they literally only need to go to a web page, giving you that full flexibility around what you need to do. Okay, we're slowly coming towards the end of our particular webinar for today. So what I'd like to do is open the floor for questions. We've got quite a bit of time still in the way of being able to answer questions. So if you would like to, I'll open up the floor to everybody else and we'll see what questions we've got here. Okay, let me just navigate here. Issues with the use of ProjectWise and the loss of links and shortcuts. Have you come across this? I haven't actually used ProjectWise together with BIM360 Docs, so I can't really comment on that. But if you want to either tack with us online afterwards or send a question in, we'll see if we can try and get that answer to you in some way. Do we have any other questions? At the moment, I've got the questions coming in through the chat panel. Let me just see if I can. Okay. No, no more questions? Nope, doesn't look like it. 1 second, let's see if we can. Okay, how is the file hosted in the cloud and who owns and maintains the data? Okay, so the data is hosted in one of two data centers. So with BIM360 Docs, there is either a data center in the US or in Europe, and you choose which data center you want to use when you first initially buy your use for this product. You obviously own the data, that's your data, and it's obviously maintained online. So you get to choose who gets to see the data, who doesn't get to see the data. Obviously you can delete the data at any point in time as well. So yeah, I mean, you've got control over that. Probably one topic that we haven't talked about is the licensing side of things. So at the moment, everyone's probably quite used to the fact that you buy a single use of of software X, and then you buy another seat, and you buy another seat, and buy another seat, and so on, and it costs you the same for every seat. In this particular case, as you invite more people, you actually buy licenses in buckets. So for example, you buy software in single seats, in 25 buckets, in 100 buckets, and 1,000 buckets. And these seats change in price or get cheaper as time goes along. So from a usability perspective, the more people you've got using your hub, the cheaper the cost becomes. The licensing model does work based on who owns the project pays for the usage of anyone that they invite into their into their hub. So if I invite 10 people, I've got to pay for those 10 people to use the product. But from a shareability and scalability perspective, if I'm a structural engineer, an architect, or even just a steel detailer, sharing my data, having this shareability of my BIM data easily and accessible on an online platform obviously makes things a lot easier. And look, we're talking anywhere from $1.30 a day down to 27 cents a day, depending on the number of seats you get. So the cost itself is not a big deal. All right, do we have any other questions? No, it doesn't look like it. Okay. Look, if anyone else has any other questions, feel free to reply back to the original invite to our marketing team and ask the questions. Happy to answer anything offline afterwards. If not, thank you for attending this webinar and hopefully giving you some insight as to what BIM360 Docs does. Thank you. Bye-bye.